So going to privacy, some behavioral targeting vendors do collect registration data like email address, and that is considered PII, and so you need to get opt-in consent in order to combine this online activity that we're observing with any PII. That's what the industry has said. Ground rules, you need to do that. If not, you're a bad actor. We completely agree with that. So we're using only anonymous identifiers. The IP address I spoke to earlier, cookie, it's just a little file on your computer. It's an empty file, and people put IDs inside it. So the industry self-reg guidelines say it's opt-out for this anonymous use of BT because the chance of harm is far less. In fact, it's almost non-existent. I have not heard of a harm, or even a proposed harm that can come from anonymous use of data. All the harms are when you begin merging that activity with someone in the real world, because that's normally where the harm will occur. There are a whole bunch of data mining articles talking about anonymous data. And if I have 3 bits of anonymous data, I can uniquely identify someone in the real world. I don't have the papers cited, but if people are curious, I can send them to you. So they're doing analysis saying, I'm going to look at demographics. I'm going to look at gender and even birth year and zip code. They could, with 3 pieces of data, in most zip codes, be 80% accurate with who they're identifying in the real world. So they would argue 3 pieces of anonymous data is now PII. I disagree, because the way that they were, and there was another case with the AOL. The AOL released for research purposes a whole bunch of anonymous or anonymized search data. They took all of the user IDs and made up random numbers for them, and some journalists went through that data set and identified, I think, about 5 people and called them and said, did you search on this? And they said, yes, how'd you know? And so they were able to go from this anonymized data set back to people in the real world with, theoretically, only anonymous data. Well, both of those papers fail to mention that they are not using just anonymous data to uncover PII. They're merging anonymous data with PII. They went to the public phone records and said, all right, someone searched on phone number, XYZ123. I'm going to call up that number and say, did you just search on your own telephone number? Well, yes, I did. Right? So they did a merge with some other source that had the record and the PII in it. And actually, when you look, a lot of the AOL search cases were on searching on Social Security number. But there's no way to know if you're searching on your own or someone else's Social Security number. So really, you need to do this merge with a PII data set in order for anonymous data to become PII. But you'll find if you just do a search tonight that there's, lots and lots of papers saying, oh, no, if I have enough anonymous data, if I pile all these zeros on top, somehow it'll turn into a 1. And I really don't believe that to be true. And with that, I thank you. So I think we have time for a few questions. Yes?
You touched earlier about visitors that are interested, visitors that are in market.
Yep.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
How do you identify that? And also you mentioned external data.
Yep.
Is one category of external data intent data, and what is intent data?
Yeah. So excellent question. So there's like 3 types of guesses about someone's profile. Right? You can guess things about them, descriptive. I'm going to guess you're a male. I'm going to guess you're this age group. I'm going to guess you live in this area, kind of describing who that person is. You can guess what they like to do. You like golf, and you golf a lot. And then the final one is guessing what they're likely to buy, right? And that's the purchase intent data. So you may like BMWs a lot, but I'm going to distinguish that interest in BMWs from the intent to buy a BMW. And of course, if you can make a good distinction between those 2 types of activities, there's a lot of money to be made because your response rates will go up. In terms of buying intent data, there are these data aggregators who will provide you, quote-unquote, intent data, but there is no standardized definition in our industry. There's no, this is the golden model that everyone uses. Everyone's got their own unique access to inputs, their own process. It's a black box process. They're not going to tell you what it is. Or if they do, they're going to say, oh, yeah, we use some sort of regression. Right? They're not going to get into the details. And as a public company, I can't get into the details either. So I apologize that I didn't have a whole bunch of our formulas up here. But that's kind of, yes, you can buy people's intent data, but what you're actually buying is a black box. And that's, from our perspective, why we began operating this profile network. So if you put yourself in an agency or marketer's perspective, you got 5 different vendors who all say, I will sell you BMW intent data. And you go, great, how do I compare you guys? And they go, well, we can't really tell you where we get our data, how we process or aggregate it. All we can do is tell you we've got an output for you to buy. Right? It's very hard for them to compare. But us sitting as this neutral third party, we can try all 5 of those data sets in one campaign and shift budget to whichever of those data sets happens to be working best. So we offer our own behavioral targeting. We've got about 500 million profiles under management. But we also have 100 million profiles that are given to us by third parties. And we don't bias our account managers to focus on our data first. And if we run out, then go to the third party. It's really performance-driven. We're trying to do the best for our advertisers because we believe in that iterative loop. If we give them better performance, they'll come back and do another buy with us. Does that answer your question? Greg.
When I do a search, it's on interest, it's on trend.
Yep.
But that's my search. Is there any move or trend in the industry to say, I've got this profile, don't contact me about hiding my own content. Don't contact me about this or that or the other. Hey, 1 month from now, I'm going to San Diego to state of my conference. Maybe I would like a free appetizer on this profile. And so maybe I would be willing to declare some information on what I am located on the right time frame.
Yep.
Is there
So there.
something like that, managing vendors? Kind of like a company file RFP.
Yeah. So if you go to Google's interest manager screen, you can actually declare your interests. Say, Google, you didn't guess it, but I am interested in sports or golf or BMWs. You can declare that. I'd say that those interfaces aren't robust enough for you to say, look, I'm interested in this model BMW in the next 60 days, and price is more important to me than location of dealer, right? People, when they're that engaged in a purchase process, are usually going to a comparison shopping or vertical search type engine. So I don't see it moving away from that. People tend not to want to update their profiles other than, say, social network, where they're telling everyone what they're doing, but not necessarily what they're about to buy. Yeah, so for Yahoo, when I was there, I did design a interest page to opt out of interest. And the Google page allows you to do the same, saying, Google, you guessed I was interested in golf, but please don't show me any more golf ads. I've seen enough, right? And you can opt out of that interest. But the full two-way of people saying, all right, I'm now in market, please start marketing to me for this and stop marketing to me for that, is a lot of overhead on the user. And most users don't want to take that time. They really don't want to, especially across all the different vendors, right? There's Yahoo and Google and Microsoft and ValueClick and a whole bunch of other vendors. I don't want to have to manage my profile across all of them. And no one has solved that problem by having a centralized profile where you update, I'm now in the market for this. Everyone kind of reverse bid and try to sell me your product at the cheapest price, other than through vertical search with comparison shopping. There was another kind of question I thought in there on the, I do a search and people guess. People are beginning to do the long search, at least that's what I've heard it called, where they're looking at the fact that you buy a coffee machine and that you recently went to Italy and that you bought some coffee beans. And so even though you haven't even done the search yet, they're saying, well, X days, weeks later, I think you're going to need replenishment of this, or I know this part breaks and you may be looking for a repairman, trying to look at what other people have searched on who searched on that same product and try to bring the relevant results from their searches back and try to complete this persistent or long search. Because if you look at from the search engine perspective, they see random snippets of what we're interested in and huge periods where they're interested in other things. But if you can somehow bridge that gap and use the collective wisdom of crowds to try to figure out, oh, yeah, people who buy this particular flat screen TV love this DVD or hate that DVD, it is probably going to be a benefit to consumers. Question? Yeah.
Follow up on mobile internet.
Yes. So there is a lot of work being done right now on GPS location and also on the mobile behavioral targeting. There's a little bit of a problem with mobile in that the internet standards are not as robust. On the standard mobile designed websites, not all the mobile providers will pass all of the headers. If you were to think of all the data packets as envelopes, right, all the stuff on the outside of the envelope, some of them strip out or condense the length of strings of some of those headers. So it makes it a little bit harder to collect data from a mobile browsing experience and build up a profile over time. But people are working to solve